categorize the main practices of Bodhisattvas. Okay? So first, the perfection of generosity. When those who want enlightenment must give up even their body, there's no need to mention external things. Therefore, without hope or for return or any fruition, give generously. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So the six perfections are generosity, ethical discipline, patience, joyous perseverance, meditation, and wisdom. And these six are in the order of their difficulty of practice. So the perfection of generosity or giving, there's actually 4 types of giving. There's the giving of material possessions or resources. There's the giving of protection from fear. There's the giving of love and the giving of dharma. So each of those 4 are also in order of their benefit. So material things, we know, to give food, to give charity. That's probably what we're all very familiar with. Giving protection from fear would be even things like when we see that a bug has fallen into the toilet, to fish it out, to take it out using the what is that? Toilet brush. Yes, thank you. Yes? To accompany someone home at night, for example. These kinds of things, protecting them from fear. Then, the giving of love is not, not the movie kind of love, but rather, just even it can be smiling, wishing someone well, being very kind and joyful to others. And then last, the giving of dharma. It doesn't necessarily have to be, sitting on some higher seat and giving dharma teachings, but any kind of advice that we give to others that's in accord with dharma. That's the giving of dharma. Okay?
And protection of fear. Maybe I missed protection of fear. Did I miss that?
Maybe.
Protection of fear.
Protection from fear.
From fear.
So, for example, the bugs that have fallen into the toilet, to fish them out, or accompanying people home at night, any kind of fearful situation that others find themselves in, to give them protection from that. Okay. So here, see how the Bodhisattva gives is therefore without any hope for return or any fruition, give generously. So it's worth noting that there is a difference between just mere generosity and the perfection of generosity. The perfection of generosity would be conjoined with this mind of bodhicitta, the wish, to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So when you have that wish, then, as we did in the Tonglen meditation, to give away, our virtues, our body, to others. So in a similar way, when bodhisattvas would practice generosity, they'll think that even the positive karma that I'm accumulating from this practice of generosity, may that only go to ripen on others. May it only be, may I not, gain anything in return for this, but only go to benefit others. Okay? Stanza 26. Without ethics, you can't accomplish your own well-being. So wanting to accomplish others is laughable. Therefore, without worldly aspirations, safeguard your discipline. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So it's true, right? Though we want to have as the aspiration that we, benefit all sentient beings and lead them to enlightenment, well, see, without ethical discipline, we won't even get a good rebirth in the future. You see. So then, to think that we'll become fully enlightened is laughable, he's saying. So here, ethical discipline, again, has three divisions. The first is refraining from negative actions. And as we talked about the other day, there's the 10 non-virtues that are normally talked about. The 3 of body, killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. The 4 of speech, lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, and gossiping. And the 3 of mind, covetousness, malice, and wrong views. Okay? So the first type of ethical discipline is to refrain from those. So the next type of ethical discipline is, benefiting others. Yeah. That means, however we can, benefiting others, whether it be helping them do things, helping them learn skills, helping them, book train tickets or whatever we might do, helping others. Yeah? And then the last is accumulating virtue. So this is actually a little bit related because, well, when we do benefit others, we are accumulating virtue. Nonetheless, it is separated as another one. So seeing that as we wish to attain enlightenment, then that depends on accumulating a huge amount of merit or positive karma. Then we set out to accumulate the cause for enlightenment by doing virtuous actions. Okay? All right, 27. To bodhisattvas who want a wealth of virtue, those who harm are like a precious treasure. Therefore, toward all, cultivate patience without hostility. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So, Shantideva in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, he says, basically, if everyone treated us like Buddhas, then, in relation to whom could we practice patience? Right? So, just as a beggar is not an obstacle for our practice of generosity, then the enemy also isn't an obstacle to our practice of patience. You understand? So, just like we practice generosity in relation to someone who is, materially deprived, we can only practice patience in regard or in relation to someone who is harming us. Right? So since these people that harm us allow us or give us the opportunity to practice patience, then we should very much cherish them. Right? So those who harm are like a precious treasure. Why? because they're giving us the opportunity to practice patience. What do you think?
So,
Ah,
so for example, like you cherish Chinese people for
sorry, speak a little louder.
yes, like the Chinese people invading Tibet.
Yeah.
Will be cherishing them. Should we cherish the Chinese people for
Yes.
taking Tibet? Cherish for making us practice patience. Sure. It's not what they're doing, but giving the opportunity.
It's very interesting, actually. You know, I've heard many different lamas talk about this whole, the Chinese invasion of Tibet. And when you look on a big picture, you know, Tibet was basically closed off from the world. And it's only then after the Chinese invaded and then the Dalai Lama came into exile that, well, in that sense, we got access. We got access to the teachings and to these teachers.
Thanks to the Chinese, we are here.
Yeah. But anyway, as we mentioned before, right, this is not to then justify their actions. It's not to then say what they did is good. But remember, these techniques that we use to practice patience, it's so that we stop ourselves from getting angry. Because anger is, Shantideva says that there's no negativity like anger. Because anger actually destroys our previously created virtue. You know? And it impels us to do non-virtue. So it's particularly important to be able to practice patience so we don't get angry. You know, because it has this double negative effect. And just on this, I'm reminded of a story that the Dalai Lama is fond of telling, where there's one Tibetan monk who spent a long time in prison in China or Tibet, and he was tortured, and eventually he got out. He came to India. And then met the Dalai Lama. And the Dalai Lama asked him, were you ever afraid? Were you ever afraid when you were in jail? And he said, yes. One time, I was very afraid that I would lose compassion to my torturers. So, you see, this practice of patience and being able to, not get angry for the people that harm us, it benefits us, actually. It's like what the Dalai Lama says often too, right? The Dalai Lama, he often does this practice of, just smiling at others, And it's, even now when he goes to the West sometimes, there are people that, have protested against him. And so he always tries to smile. And what he says is, when he smiles at someone else, whether that person benefits or not, it's up to them. But maintaining a joyful mind, it benefits him, right? So anyway, the divisions of the practice of patience also has 3. Patience in relation to those who have harmed us, patience in relation to suffering in general, and then patience with regard to gaining certainty about the Dharma. So, patience in regard to suffering can also be like, inanimate objects, like heat, right? Or sickness, something like this. And then being able to kind of bear and not get a very disturbed mind that you have to experience those things. Patience in relation to those who have harmed us is what we've been talking about, like turning the other cheek, not getting angry, not wanting to retaliate. And then patience with regard to gaining certainty about the Dharma. Well, I hope many of you will continue to study, and you'll see there are a lot of books to read. There's a lot of different concepts, a lot of lists, a lot of new terminology, and therefore to gain certainty, gain realization is going to take a long time. And it's not always easy, but to be able to kind of persevere and bear the hardship of what it takes to gain certainty about the Dharma is the third type of patience. Okay? Stanza 28. Seeing even hearers and solitary realizers who accomplish only their own good, strive as if to put a fire on their head. For the sake of all beings, make enthusiastic effort, the source of all good qualities. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. The box of tissues, could you get that for me, please? Thank you. So hearers and solitary realizers, these are the people who have as the goal of their practice individual liberation for themselves alone. Okay? Though most of the Buddha's disciples were hearers, and they're called hearers because they heard the teachings from the Buddha, they put it into practice, and then they attained enlightenment. So solitary realizers also attain a sort of individual liberation, but what they do is actually they have a little bit of pride. So they want, in their last life, when they attain nirvana, they want to do it in a time and a place where no Buddha exists in the world. Understand? So solitary means in the last life, without the relying on a Buddha's teachings. Okay? Anyway, both of these types are, they attain individual liberation for themselves alone. Okay? So, that's why it is said, who accomplish only their own good. They only accomplish, liberation for themselves alone. Nonetheless, even though they're just trying to accomplish the benefit for themselves, they strive, they put in effort, as if to put out a fire on their head. So this is actually similar. There's a Nagarjuna in the letter to a friend. He says, even if your hair or clothing were on fire, to not pay attention to that and rather strive for your own individual liberation. So anyway, seeing the various faults of samsara, seeing the faults of this cycle of rebirth, then it's the most urgent thing that we have to do to get liberation from samsara, so we don't have to experience this type of suffering again. So if even these who are only working for their own liberation put that much effort in, now we who are striving for complete enlightenment so we can be of utmost benefit to all sentient beings, we need to put even more effort, right? Hey, is it the same? Wow. I've never seen these before. And now, here we are, matching. I have more than you. We should get sponsored by these people, Yeah. Huh? Tushita Goa, brought to you by Yogi Kantika. Yes. Okay. So here, our practice of enthusiastic effort also has, I think, 3 divisions. Okay. First is overcoming procrastination, right? So we need to make enthusiastic effort, and we need to make enthusiastic effort starting now. So this thought of procrastinating, oh, I'll do it later, I'll practice later, I'll go to the next retreat. So the way that then that type of laziness is overcome, that's it. There's 3 types of laziness, and our practice of enthusiastic effort go to counter those 3 types of laziness. The first type of laziness is the laziness that is procrastinating, putting off. And so this is countered by doing the meditations, especially on death and impermanence. And especially, the time of our death is uncertain. Death can come at any time. What's going to happen tomorrow's sunrise or our rebirth? Who knows? So thinking in that way, since the moment of our death can come at any time, then we can't delay in our practice. The second type of laziness is the laziness that is having excessive attachment to the inferior. Means, watching movies or, indulging in sense pleasures, these kinds of things. Remember, they're not necessarily bad in and of themselves, but they take up a lot of time. So if we have very strong, attachment to these things, then they're gonna just our life will be wasted pursuing them. So it's very interesting. But when we practice, when we meditate, I don't know, how long do you guys meditate for? Right? Maybe max an hour. Max. Maximum. Maybe an hour and a half, 2. But the other things that we do, you know, I don't know. At one point, I'm sorry, but you know, I think I watched all 3 Lord of the Rings movies, you know, back to back to back. It's like 10 hours, right? No problem. Or, I don't know, we go out to the party, right? And, you know, we can dance for hours, right? So we have a lot of energy for these, you know, samsaric things. But when it comes time for our practice that's actually going to lead to, you know, the happiness and well-being of not only ourselves but all sentient beings, right? Then it's like very little energy. So anyway, to overcome that type of laziness that is attached to the inferior, then to think about the faults of samsara, and in particular, to think that, you know, there's no end to chasing after samsaric pleasures. And, you know, also as we've said before, there's nothing new in samsara. Nothing new. So, the thing that would be new for us would be to gain liberation or enlightenment. That's something we've never done, you know. So that's why they say, did I say this yesterday? But you know, the attainment of liberation and enlightenment is one-time work, right? Means once we do it, it's done. Whereas everything else that we do in samsara, we have to do over and over again, right? Even, you know, like in this life, we got our education, we got our job, we made money, we found our spouse, we had children, we did this, that. Okay, we've done that. And we'll have to do that again and again. It's endless. But once we attain liberation from samsara, there's no going back. Hi. Huh? You have a question?
Yeah. I just wanted to know, like, does it matter if we're doing it over and over again because we don't actually remember the previous time? Like, for me, I don't remember my past lives.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing this again in my experience. It's all new for me. Everything I'm doing is new, including sitting here and listening to you speak is new for me.
Yes.
So if I don't perceive it as having something that I repeat over and over again, why is it a problem?
Well, why is it a problem? You see, whether, how do you say? We're trying to compare the two things, whereas there is the state of liberation where one doesn't have to, you know, take uncontrolled rebirth again, compared to the state now. But even forgetting about past and future lives, in this life that you have now, then, you know, there is undesirable experiences that you have. Is that right?
Yeah.
So the state of liberation is, well, of course, it means freedom from the cycle of rebirth. But even if we just consider this life, it's because we've taken a rebirth uncontrolled that was projected by our previous karma and our afflictive emotions that we have this type of body and mind that then experiences undesirable things. So whether or not you remember your past lives, if you remember suffering in this life, you know, then that's it's enough for now.
So the point of pursuing like liberation is to end suffering.
That's right. That's right. That's what liberation is, the freedom from suffering.
There's so much suffering in this life because he wants to go in a hospital where they have children having cancer, for example, from their breast. For me, it was like the main point was start to look for Dharma. Because in real life, you don't have answer why they suffer these babies. And there's so much when you start to analyze. There's many people have suffering.
Isn't suffering just an experience? Three-dimensional experience?
Well, it's an experience that I would rather be without.
I've learned more from my suffering than I have from my joy.
Yeah.
Do you want it again?
Often I don't need to repeat the same experience again once I've learned from it.
Well, even this, we want to learn from our suffering because we don't want to experience that again. Right?
But even if I was to experience it again, I wouldn't hate it so much because I know what it is.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'll continue. So, stanza 29. Understanding that disturbing emotions are destroyed by special insight with calm abiding. Cultivate concentration which surpasses the four formless absorptions. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. Okay. So, sorry. We started on Friday afternoon, and so we've had a lot of material we already covered. So I can't go into that. So I have to continue. Okay? So as we were saying, the root of samsara, the root of all of our suffering, is the misapprehension that we have with regards to how we and other phenomena exist. Okay? So actually what is needed then is the correct view that understands the ultimate nature of all phenomena. And when we understand that, we first will do it based on a conceptual consciousness. A conceptual consciousness means, when we think about our home, where we grew up, right? It's not directly appearing to our mind right now, like objects in this room, but we use conceptual thought to think about it. Yes? So in a similar way, the first time we realize emptiness or the ultimate view of reality, we're going to do it through concepts. But although that conceptual thought is great, well, we have to continue to cultivate, and through repeated meditation, we'll be able to transform that conceptual realization of emptiness into a direct realization of emptiness. So, that has the power then to destroy all the disturbing emotions. So this special insight then is the insight into the ultimate nature of reality. But the calm abiding mind, or shamatha, then is they kind of liken it to if you have like a dark room and you're trying to view the murals on the wall, right? If you have a lamp or a candle, then that can illuminate so you can see. But if it's very windy here, then, and the flame is flickering back and forth, the light won't be clear, right? So to then have the wind guard that then allows the flame to be undisturbed, that's likened to the calm abiding mind. Yeah. The other analogy is like if you're chopping a tree, right? To chop down a tree, right? You need a sharp axe, and the sharpness of the axe is like the wisdom. But you also then need to continue to, strike the tree in the same place, right? So that is like the calm abiding mind that's able to stay on one object. Yeah? So only with these two combined, the special insight realizing emptiness and the powerful penetrating concentration that's able to maintain focus on one object, then our conceptual realization of emptiness then becomes a direct realization of emptiness, which then has the power to abandon or destroy the disturbing emotions. Okay? So, just so you guys know, here when it talks about the four formless absorptions, once you attain this calmly abiding mind, okay, calm abiding or shamatha, what that means is, one is able to maintain focus on the object of meditation for as long as one wants. And they say usually 4 hours, but it wouldn't be necessarily limited to 4 hours. And that mind is also conjoined with physical as well as mental bliss, and they call it pliancy. Pliancy means like serviceability. We can then have our mind, once we attain calm abiding in relation to one object, we can then put it on other objects at will. Okay? Now, once you've attained that, then there's these other absorptions that one can go into. And, the highest of these absorptions are the four formless absorptions. So, you see, why then this special insight and calm abiding together surpasses those four formless absorptions is because, having that mind needs to analyze the ultimate view of reality. And so, when one's mind is absorbed on these formless absorptions, there's no analysis taking place. But that in and of itself is only able to suppress some of the afflictions, but only combining it with the special insight is one able to then destroy the disturbing emotions. And so that's why it is the union of calm abiding and special insight surpasses the mere concentration on four formless absorptions. Okay? Alright. Stanza 30. Since the five perfections, this means the first five perfections, without wisdom cannot bring perfect enlightenment, along with skillful means cultivate the wisdom which does not conceive the three spheres as real. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Okay, So here, the three spheres, actually, with any of the first five perfections, we can consider the three spheres. So in the perfection of generosity, when we have the giver, right? The gift, what is this one? Okay. And the recipient, this is a plastic flower. It's put in a bowl of water. So it stays fresh? Huh? What?
So that it floats. The bowl should have been bigger.
So that it floats. This bowl, I mean, the petals are, anyway, okay.
Make it more real. Make it more real.
Make it more real, yeah. Okay. So we have the giver, the gift, and the recipient, right? So those are the three spheres. So, remember, the mistaken, deluded way that we conceive objects to exist is that they would be independent, objective. But see here, the giver, the gift, and the recipient are all interrelated, interdependent. You can have no action of charity without those three, right? So anyway, the first five perfections without wisdom cannot bring perfect enlightenment. So, in general, we were talking about dividing up the various practices into, well, here's the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas, then we also have the 6 perfections, but at the very least way of determining it, we have the practices on the so-called method side and the practice on the wisdom side. So the method side is the compassion, and when we think about the 6 perfections, the first 3 perfections are on the method side. Yeah? The last 2 perfections are on the wisdom side, and then the perfection of enthusiastic effort is kind of half-half. It's needed for both. Okay. Stanza 31. If you don't examine your own errors, you may look like a practitioner, but not as one. Therefore, always examining your own errors, rid yourself of them. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So yeah, as we were saying before, that to see faults in others is very easy, and to see the faults in ourselves are more difficult. So rather than spending time and energy viewing faults in others, to then use that level of precision in our own activities, in our own behavior. And then when we do notice that we have some faults or mistakes, to rid ourselves from them is a practice of Bodhisattvas. Okay, so 32. If through the influence of disturbing emotions you point out the faults of another Bodhisattva, you yourself are diminished. So don't mention the faults of those who have entered the great vehicle. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So yeah, here the key is if under the influence of disturbing emotions. Okay. So in general, we should help others, reach the state of perfection. That means overcome their faults. But if we are doing it from a standpoint of disturbed mind, then you yourself are diminished. So, there's the great Vietnamese master Thich Nhat Hanh. Have any of you heard of him? So, in his monastery, they have a practice that, actually, the more senior monks should be pointing out the faults of the junior monks, so that the junior monks can learn from their mistakes and not engage in such behavior in the future. But he said, he establishes a rule that if the senior monk, although they're senior, have a disturbed mind, like anger or jealousy, pride, then as long as they have that disturbed mind, they shouldn't point out the mistakes of others. Yeah. Okay? All right. 33. Reward and respect cause us to quarrel and make hearing, thinking, and meditation decline. For this reason, give up attachment to the households of friends, relations, and benefactors. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So, again, 8 worldly concerns, which we've mentioned before. Spending so much time, 8 worldly concerns, right? Praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasant experiences, unpleasant experiences, and having a good reputation versus a bad reputation. These worldly concerns are, taking up the majority of our time. And as we are so attached to having these worldly concerns that we like, as well as avoiding the ones we don't like, and that takes up all our time. So there's a story of Geshe Bengunggyal in Tibet. And anyway, he was a great practitioner. But one day, he heard that his sponsor was coming to town. And then he spent the morning, cleaning up his room, and he arranged very beautiful offerings on his altar. And then before the sponsor came, he realized, his motivation was to, impress the sponsor, right? It wasn't a pure motivation. So then, when he noticed that, he then took the ash from the burnt incense and threw it all over his altar, so it would look very messy. And so then another master, Padampa Sangye, had clairvoyance.
Pardon?
Had clairvoyance. He was able to see what was going on. And he was actually giving a teaching at that time. And then he saw that Geshe Bengunggyal had done that. And he said, in Tibet today, someone has made the best offering to the Buddhas. The best offering, of course, being giving up the worldly concerns. Okay. Stanza 34. Harsh words disturb the minds of others and cause deterioration in a bodhisattva's conduct. Therefore, give up harsh words which are unpleasant to others. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Yeah, you guys know, right? This even worldly people know, right? Criticizing others, harsh words, it's not nice. So yeah. So we give up harsh words. Okay, stanza 35. Habitual disturbing emotions are hard to stop through counteractions. Armed with antidotes, the guards of mindfulness and mental alertness destroy disturbing emotions like attachment at once as soon as they arise. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. Okay. So, I didn't mention this, I don't think, but remember when we were doing the meditation on mindfulness of the breath? This is actually a way to develop two qualities of mind. So mindfulness is the factor of mind which is able to, hold the object. And then mental alertness, which is sometimes translated as introspection, is a faculty of mind. Okay, so in the context of doing the meditation on mindfulness of the breath, we use the faculty of mindfulness, and about 85% of our mind is trying to focus and stay on the breath. But the other 15% then is like the internal quality control of our meditation practice. And it's one part of the mind viewing the mind and seeing if, excitement or mental scattering or lethargy or, checking if we're still thinking and clearly focus on the mind, the breath. You understand? So those two things, mindfulness and mental alertness. Okay? So that's in the context of our meditation practice. But actually, throughout our day, to always be mindful about what's happening in our own minds. And then when disturbing emotions arise, to apply the antidotes immediately. That's our main job throughout the rest of the day. Okay? All right. So that practice is then, in brief, 36. In brief, whatever you are doing, ask yourself, what is the state of my mind? With constant mindfulness and mental alertness, accomplish others' good. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So Shantideva has a similar to sum up the practice, it's just doing this. Always looking on what's going on in your mind. If there's negative emotions that are there, to apply the antidotes. And he says, I think Shantideva says, well, what more practice is there than this? Okay. To remove suffering of limitless beings, understanding the purity of the three spheres, dedicate the virtue for making such effort to enlightenment. This is the practice of Bodhisattvas. So again, this is the dedication. We did this at the end of the previous 2 days. So we have a motivation that we set at the beginning of the session. We try to sustain that through the session. And then that positive energy or the merit that we create, then we dedicate it. We dedicate it so that it ripens or becomes the cause for the best possible thing, which in this case is to dedicate the virtue of making such efforts to enlightenment. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, my voice is very much declining in the past couple minutes. For all who want to train on the Bodhisattva path, I have written the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas, following what has been said by the excellent ones on the meaning of the sutras, tantras, and treatises. So, remember we were saying, the sutras, there's 108 volumes. The tantras as well, many volumes. And then the treatises are the commentaries on the sutras and tantras written by other, he's referring to Indian masters. But all of those, and there's probably, I think, 300 volumes of those, then he's taken these practices from the other authentic sources and then just written this text, which present those practices in a concise manner. Okay? Though not poetically pleasing to scholars, owing to my poor intelligence and lack of learning, I've relied on the sutras and the words of the excellent. So I think these Bodhisattva practices are without error. So he's being humble here. Shantideva also says something at the beginning of Bodhisattva Charyavatara, saying, that there's nothing new here, and I'm lacking in skill in composition. Yet Shantideva says that he's writing this text in order to familiarize himself with the practices. So he's being humble. Okay? But anyway, what he's saying is, since all of these practices have been taken from the authentic treatises and sutras, then basically, since the sources that he relied on are unmistaken, he's giving us the kind of, confidence that this treatise or this text is also without error. Okay? However, as the great deeds of bodhisattvas are hard to fathom for one of my poor intelligence, I beg the excellent to forgive all faults, such as contradictions and non sequiturs. Non sequitur, yes? Non sequitur means something that is unrelated to to the topic at hand. Again, I don't think there's either contradictions or non sequiturs in this text, but Again, he's being humble. Okay? Lastly, through the virtue from this, may all living beings gain the ultimate and conventional altruistic intention, and thereby become like the protector Chenrezig, who dwells in neither extreme, not in the world nor in peace. So here, Togme Zampo is making his own dedication. So the protector Chenrezig is, Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion. And then, dwelling in neither extreme. The world would be, the extreme of samsara. And one comes to not dwell in the extreme of the world or samsara by having the wisdom that realizes the ultimate nature of reality. And then the extreme of peace refers to actually these hearers and solitary realizers who've attained the state of personal liberation. It says that they are abiding in the extreme of personal peace. Yeah? So all the Buddhas, they abide in this state of non-abiding nirvana. Non-abiding nirvana. Whereby, you see, it is said that, if one were to attain personal liberation in this life, right, then the mind will still continue after death. But since the causes of taking rebirth in samsara are no longer there, after departing from this life, one no longer takes a gross physical body like this, but rather one's mental consciousness will go on and then abide in a state of blissful samadhi for many eons. But while one is abiding in that samadhi, since one doesn't have a gross physical form, then they're not actually doing much to benefit others, right? Because it's through having a gross body like this that we're able to benefit, right? We're able to, help others because we have a body like this. So that is why the those who have attained nirvana, personal liberation, that's why we say they're in the extreme of peace. Okay. Yeah. As I mentioned the other day, I think, with our dedication, then one of my own gurus, Chidin Rinpoche, then he explained like this. See, the ultimate dedication of our merit is like this, to dedicate that due to the merit of these virtuous actions, may all sentient beings quickly be freed from all their suffering and abide in the peerless happiness of enlightenment forever, right? But how does that happen? Well, since the attainment of enlightenment is just happening after people have trained themselves along the path, then they need access to the teachings that discuss, that lay out the practices. So then we can also dedicate for the flourishing of the Dharma teachings, the unmistaken methods to attain enlightenment. And then, well, not only the teachings need to exist, but people will then need access to, virtuous friends or teachers that are able to guide them through the stages of practice. So that lead to the state of enlightenment. So then the other dedication we make is for the long and stable lives of the spiritual friends or the holy gurus. Yeah? And then, because the main attainment, the causes of enlightenment are these conventional and ultimate, altruistic intention, means bodhicitta, then we also dedicate for the this mind of bodhicitta that has not yet arisen, for it to arise and grow, and that which has arisen to never decline but increase more and more. Yes? So, you got that? Those are the four kind of main dedications that we make. Oh, yes, thank you. The third kind of laziness is the laziness of, self-criticism. Means, I'm so, bad. The kind of, self-deprecation, such that we think, I can never attain enlightenment. I'm so, whatever, unworthy. The self-deprecation. And then the antidote to that is to then reflect on the teachings of Buddha nature, where, none of the faults of the mind are intrinsically part of the mind. Therefore, there are methods by which we can, purify the mind from all of its faults. And so, as Shantideva says, right, that, even mosquitoes and bugs and so forth, they'll all one day attain enlightenment. So for us, who have the precious human rebirth with, adequate intelligence and interest, then of course we can also. Okay? Okay. Yes.
I have something flying around in my head that somebody told me recently, which was saying, if I step on an animal or kill an animal, rather than seeing it as a detriment to that sentient being, perhaps could it be that I am, that person or whoever is enabling a better life, a reincarnation which is more, just better for this being, so therefore what's wrong with killing in a way, that's a bit extreme, but maybe you get the gist, so that just got thrown at me and I wonder what you have to say.
Yeah. So I think the point is, you see, okay, there is this story. There was a great Indian Mahasiddha named Tilopa, and he was the guru of another great Mahasiddha, Naropa. And when Naropa went to go meet him, Tilopa was biting off the heads of fishes and snap his finger like this. So Tilopa, being a great enlightened master, he was performing this, what they call the transference of consciousness. So he was then shooting these fishes' consciousnesses to a pure land of the Buddha, where they could be enlightened, right? But for us, You see, we don't know where these animals are going to be reborn, right? And even it could be worse. They could be reborn in the hells, right? So it is said, therefore, that unless you know, this is a very kind of dangerous thing, right? Now, this thought actually came up in one of the commentaries I read about this actually, about the 37 practices of Bodhisattvas. Someone asked, if someone has like intestinal worms, right? What to do? Because that is a sentient being. And then the person who was asking the question said that they heard one teacher say that when you take the medicine to kill the worms, to then think that you're offering them the opportunity to get reborn in a higher state. So then the teacher who was giving this commentary said he didn't accept that. Yeah, that was just a way to justify our own killing, right? I mean, that being said, remember we were talking about the precious human rebirth, and we do have to take care of our health. And sometimes in samsara, there's no good way, right? We have to choose the so-called lesser of two evils, or lesser of many evils, But when we were talking about, this is something practical. When we were talking about what makes a karmic action complete, we had the 4 factors, right? Let's say we have intestinal worms and we have to, our health is declining. To even, have a kind of mind of regretting that we're put in this position where we have to kill these worms, makes the karma lighter. The karma lighter, not as heavy. And then of course, to do things like, for example, we could go around the stupa, do circumambulation. Then all the beings, those living beings in our intestines, they also gain the merits of having gone around the stupa. So we could do that, and then take the medicine with that thought. I don't want to do this. Really, I feel bad about it, but I need to get better, I need to get healthy, and therefore I'm going to take this medicine. Okay?